The scanner moved slowly across the surface of the clay. A technician in a European archive basement, working late, running a routine digitization pass on a fragment that had sat in a catalog drawer for over a century. The tablet was small enough to hold in one palm, reddish-brown, one corner missing, a diagonal crack running across the face like a fault line through the writing. The catalog entry called it a MUL.APIN variant, a Babylonian astronomical text, administrative in function, copied sometime around 700 BCE, a star list, a calendar tool, completely ordinary. Then the scan resolved and the final line of the path of Anu came into focus. Every other entry on the tablet followed the same structure: star name, rising date, interval, omen note. 22 entries, each one identical in format, a bureaucratic record of the night sky, as organized and repetitive as a tax ledger. But the 23rd entry, the final star in the equatorial celestial belt the Sumerians named after Anu, the Sky Father, broke the pattern. Where the interval notation should have appeared, something else was written, a different sign cluster entirely, one that did not belong in a calendar. The technician flagged it and kept working. It would be months before anyone asked what that sign cluster actually said. This is the story of what it said. The MUL.APIN is a real text. Scholars have known about it for over a century. It is the earliest surviving general compendium of Babylonian astronomical knowledge, compiled around 1000 BCE, though the observations it encodes are older, some traceable back to 2000 BCE or earlier. The tablets list approximately 70 stars and constellations, and they organize the sky into 3 parallel bands named after gods: the path of Enlil in the north, the path of Ea in the south, and running along the celestial equator, the path of Anu. Within that central belt, 23 stars are cataloged. Each one carries the same structured entry. Each one, that is, except the last. The official explanation for the anomaly is straightforward. The final entries of ancient tablets are the most vulnerable to damage and copyist error. A crack in the clay, a distracted scribe, a fragment that was copied from an already damaged source. Any of these could account for a broken line. Mainstream scholars who have noted the variance in the 23rd entry have classified it as precisely that: uncertain reading, possibly damaged, not meaningful. The catalog entry for the fragment simply reads in the relevant footnote, "reading uncertain." That explanation is not unreasonable. In most cases, it would be enough. But the archive flag that came out of the digitization project eventually reached a digital restoration specialist who was running AI-assisted pattern matching across the CDLI, the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, a real and active database housing digitized images of hundreds of thousands of cuneiform tablets. Her job was to identify sign clusters in damaged texts that matched patterns elsewhere in the corpus. It was routine computational work. She was not looking for anything unusual. The sign cluster from the 23rd entry produced a match. Not from another MUL.APIN copy, not from another calendar text. The match came from the Enuma Anu Enlil, a different series entirely. 70 cuneiform tablets of celestial omens, beginning with the phrase "when the gods Anu and Enlil," used by Babylonian priests to interpret sky events as messages bearing consequences for kings and kingdoms. The Enuma Anu Enlil and the MUL.APIN belong to overlapping traditions, and scribal language sometimes crossed between them. That overlap is exactly what mainstream scholars pointed to when the flag was noted. Formulaic language, textual contamination, a phrase that appeared in omen texts sometimes bled into astronomical lists. Nothing significant, except the specific phrase that matched was not generic omen language. According to the comparative analysis, the sign cluster from the 23rd entry aligned with a phrase used in the Enuma, Anu, Enlil to describe a star that initiates contact or sends a signal, not a star that rises, not a star that portends drought or war or the death of a king, a star that communicates. To mainstream scholars, the match was a computational artifact, a low-confidence alignment in a damaged text, easily explained by scribal overlap. The finding was submitted as a working note to an academic database, classified as inconclusive, and filed. It has been cited once in a journal that mainstream Assyriology does not engage with. The tablet was not reclassified. No follow-up scan was commissioned. No one had to hide the finding. They only had to stop asking what the last line meant. Here is where the Dingir problem enters the story. In Sumerian cuneiform, there is a sign. It is shaped like an 8-pointed star. It is written like this, the Dingir sign, and it is one of the most philosophically compressed symbols in the ancient world because it carries 3 meanings simultaneously. It means God, it means sky, it means heaven. The Sumerians used the same written mark for all 3 concepts because to them, these were not separate categories. The divine and the celestial were the same thing. The sky was where the gods originated. The gods were, in some fundamental sense, of the sky. This sign, called Dingir, functions in most cuneiform texts as a determinative, a silent prefix placed before the name of any deity to mark it as divine. It appears before Enlil, before Enki, before Inanna. It is a grammatical classifier, not a descriptive term. Mainstream scholars understand it as a structural feature of the writing system, not a theological statement about where gods literally lived. But in the anomalous 23rd entry of the Path of Anu fragment, the Dingir sign does not appear as a prefix. It appears embedded inside the star name itself. In every other entry on the tablet, Dingir sits before the name as a silent marker. In this entry, it is folded into the name as if the star and the god are not 2 things, one classifying the other, but one thing described in a single term. This structural placement is unusual. It has been noted in the academic literature as irregular. The mainstream explanation is, again, copyist inconsistency, a scribe working from a damaged original who filled a gap incorrectly. That explanation is possible. The alternative reading is more specific. Some researchers who work outside mainstream Assyriology argue that the Dingir embedding is not an error. They argue that the Sumerians, when they wrote that sign, were not using metaphor. They were recording taxonomy. The beings they called gods were not beings associated with the sky. They were beings from specific stars. The Dingir sign did not mean divinity in the abstract. It meant sky origin as a category of entity. And when that sign appears inside a star name rather than before it, it may indicate not that the star was sacred, but that the star was a source. To mainstream scholarship, this interpretation requires assumptions unsupported by the surrounding text. To alternative researchers, the structural anomaly is exactly the kind of detail that matters precisely because it does not fit. Then there is the number. Adjacent to the anomalous sign cluster in the 23rd entry is a numeral. Every other entry on the tablet uses numerals to indicate day intervals for heliacal risings, the number of days between a star's first visible appearance on the horizon and its next. These numbers fall consistently between 15 and 30. The numeral in the final entry falls outside this range entirely. According to the fragmented reading, it is either significantly larger or it is a positional notation, the kind used in Babylonian mathematical astronomy not for scheduling, but for angular distance. a direction in the sky rather than a point in time. A calendar tablet that ends with a direction instead of a date is no longer purely a calendar. The pattern does not stay in one archive. Multiple copies of the MUL.APIN exist, held in collections across Europe and the Middle East. Scholars comparing these copies have documented a consistent feature. The 22 entries that precede the final one are stable across copies, reproduced with high fidelity, showing only the minor variations expected from scribal transmission. The 23rd entry is different. It varies. Different copies show different scribal choices at exactly that position, some damaged, some apparently filled in differently, some with the final line written in a slightly different hand. Every other entry is consistent, only the last one keeps changing. The mainstream explanation holds. Final entries are most exposed to damage. The variance is expected. It carries no special significance. But consider what that variance means if the mainstream explanation is only partly right. If the final entry was consistently uncertain across multiple independent copying traditions, that uncertainty may not be accidental. Restricted knowledge in ancient scribal cultures was handled not through deletion, but through controlled variation. Different versions preserved in different temple libraries with the most sensitive material transmitted selectively. The 23rd entry diverges where the others do not. That could be damage. It could also be something else. The apkallu are the next connection, and they should not be in this story at all. In Sumerian tradition, the apkallu were 7 sages who existed before the Great Flood. They were sent by the god Enki to teach civilization to humanity, writing, law, agriculture, mathematics, the measurement of the sky. They are depicted in Mesopotamian art as winged beings wearing the skin of fish, standing beside kings and temple doorways, their hands raised in gestures that scholars classify as ritual purification. They are understood as mythological figures, wisdom archetypes, divine intermediaries between the gods and early human communities. Their texts use a specific phrase to describe their origin. The phrase translates roughly as "those who watch from the pure waters of heaven." It is a line associated with pre-flood cosmology, with the idea that the sages came from somewhere above and returned to somewhere above after the floodwaters came. It is understood as poetic language for divine oversight. The sign cluster from the 23rd entry of the Path of Anu fragment contains linguistic elements that overlap with this apkallu phrase. The match is not identical. The texts are from different traditions, different centuries, different scribal schools. But the structural echo is specific enough that the AI pattern matching flagged it, and specific enough that the researcher who reviewed the flag noted it in her working document before the file was closed. Why would a star catalog use language borrowed from pre-flood sage mythology? The mainstream answer is formulaic bleed. The alternative question is whether the star being cataloged in the 23rd entry was, in some earlier version of the tradition, the star associated with where the apkallu came from. Not metaphorically, specifically. The 8-pointed star does not stay in Mesopotamia. The same symbol, 8 points radiating from a center, the same form as the Dingir sign, appears on Kassite Kuduru boundary stones from the 2nd millennium BCE. It appears in early Vedic astronomical symbolism. It appears in Egyptian stellar iconography from contexts predating significant contact with Mesopotamia. In each cultural instance, mainstream scholars attribute the appearance to independent development. The 8-pointed star is a natural abstraction of a bright celestial object. and its convergence across cultures reflects universal human responses to the night sky. But there is a detail that alternative researchers return to repeatedly. In each of these cultural instances, the eight-pointed star is not associated with the sky generally. It is associated specifically with a being that came from the sky. Not a god of rain or harvest or the sea. A sky origin being, something that descended, something that came from above and returned above. The structural meaning of the symbol across civilizations that were not supposed to be in contact is consistent in a way that goes beyond its shape. The same symbol, the same category of meaning, different millennia, different continents. Mainstream scholarship calls this convergence. Alternative researchers call it memory. Return now to the original fragment and look at it again. The 23rd entry in the path of Anu does not describe a star the way the other 22 entries do. It does not give a rising date tied to an agricultural season. It does not give a calendar interval in days. According to the speculative rereading enabled by AI pattern matching, and this is framed explicitly as unverified, as an alternative interpretation that mainstream Assyriology rejects, the entry appears to describe a star by three attributes: its position as an angular notation pointing to a location in the sky, its status using the watching or returning language borrowed from Apkallu tradition, and a cycle interval measured not in days but in a larger unit. If that larger unit is the SAR, a real Sumerian numerical unit equivalent to 3,600, used in the Sumerian king list to measure the enormously long reigns attributed to pre-flood kings, then the entry is not a calendar note. It is a recurrence prediction, not when the star rises, when something associated with it returns. Mainstream scholars reject this reading directly. The SAR as a year interval in this context is unsupported by the surrounding text. The interpretation requires assumptions the tablet does not establish. The fragmented condition of the final line makes any confident reading speculative at best. The official explanation may still be correct. It is the simpler answer. It does not require the 23rd entry to mean anything beyond what a damaged tablet routinely yields. But here is what the simpler answer has to account for. The structural break in the final entry is not random damage. It is a positional substitution, a sign cluster replacing something that should have been a calendar interval. The Dingir embedding is irregular in a way that is structurally unusual regardless of what caused it. The pattern-matching flag linking the entry to Enuma, Anu, Enlil contact language was produced by computational tools operating on the actual signs, not by wishful interpretation. The variance of the 23rd entry across multiple independent MUL.APIN copies is documented. And the eight-pointed star that means God and sky and shining origin appears with the same structural meaning in cultures separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years. None of these details individually proves anything. The copyist error hypothesis is not unreasonable. Taken together, however, the pattern does not resolve cleanly into accident. The working note filed by the digital restoration specialist remains in the academic database. It has not been updated. The tablet fragment remains classified as a MUL.APIN variant, routine function, reading uncertain in the final entry. No follow-up scan has been commissioned. The archive department responsible for the collection operates with a small staff and significant budget constraints. There is nothing conspiratorial in how the finding was handled. It was flagged, noted, and absorbed into the background noise of an underfunded field managing 500,000 recovered tablets. the vast majority of which have never been read. 500,000 tablets. Experts estimate only a fraction have been fully translated. AI-assisted cuneiform recognition is now active and improving. The CDLI is expanding its digitized holdings. The tools that did not exist a decade ago are beginning to move through the backlog. Whatever is written in those drawers and storage boxes has not yet been read. The 23rd star in the path of Anu sits in a belt that modern astronomers have mapped extensively. The celestial equatorial band corresponding to the path of Anu contains confirmed exoplanetary systems, some orbiting stars comparable in type to our own sun. The tablet does not name a star in a way that maps cleanly onto any modern catalog designation. No one is claiming it does, but the region it describes, a real documented band of sky marked out by Sumerian astronomers 5,000 years ago as the domain of the Sky Father, is the same region where modern instruments have been searching for signs of habitable worlds. That may be coincidence. The overlap between ancient celestial organization and modern exoplanet distribution may reflect nothing more than the fact that the equatorial belt has always been the easiest part of the sky to observe. Mainstream astronomers would say as much, and they would not be wrong. The question is a simpler one. The Sumerians tracked stars for calendars, for agriculture, for omens, for the regulation of religious life. That is what the MUL.APIN was built for. 22 entries follow that logic without deviation. The 23rd does not. Something changed in the final entry. Something was written there that did not fit the calendar format. A different phrase, a different numeral, a different structural relationship between the Dingir sign and the star name. Whatever the scribe was recording in that final position, it was not the same kind of information as everything that came before it. The tablet has been in a museum drawer for over a century. It was examined when it arrived, it was catalogued, it was photographed, it was noted in the literature as damaged, reading uncertain, and it has waited there ever since. The star it may be pointing to has been in the sky for considerably longer. If the official explanation is correct, the final line is a scribal accident, a fragment that broke before it could be copied cleanly, a damaged entry in a routine astronomical text, carrying nothing that was not already known. That explanation is available. It has never been disproven. But if the reading is even partially accurate, if the 23rd entry in the path of Anu was written by someone who knew something that could not be fitted into a calendar structure, who reached for different language because different language was required, then what the tablet contains is not a list of when stars rise. It is a note about one star in particular, its position, its status, and when something connected to it was expected to come back. The Sumerians did not explain their sources. They wrote what they knew, in the only script they had, and they left it in the clay for the fire to preserve. Most of what they recorded has not been read. What has been read is not fully understood, and one fragment, small enough to hold in one hand, sits in an archive with its final lines still open. The scanner passed over it once. No one has looked at it since.